sont partis. Et toi?
There is a place where the spirit of the men and the dogs matches and fits right into the Bayou culture. The Zydeco music, the crawfish boils, hog meat on the grill, and intense competition. We are going to Louisiana, to Uncle Earl's, on this episode of the Houndsman XP Podcast. I am your host, Chris Powell, and I travel all the way to Louisiana to take in the atmosphere of one of the largest assemblies of hog hunters in the world. I call it Daytona Bike Week for hog hunters. We are going to Uncle Earl's Hog Dog Trials. And I drove all the way down there to capture this rare interview with the elusive, yet intellectual and philosophical Ed Barnes. Joining us for this conversation is the equally elusive, intellectual, and philosophical, and master storyteller, Raymond Plummer. These are true dog men. Ed is the owner and publisher of Tuskers Magazine. He's a master bladesmith. His book, In Pursuit of Hog Dogs, is one of my personal favorites and favorites among hog hunters worldwide. I describe Ed like this: if Ernest Hemingway, Blackbeard, and Ben Lilly all got together and fathered a child, it would be Ed Barnes. I knew the moment I met Raymond Plummer that I had struck podcaster's gold. Underneath that straw cowboy hat was a man of 57 that was built like a college wrestler and a handshake like an old-time dairy farmer. As soon as he started talking, I knew that he was going to be a guy that had a lot of knowledge and wisdom. And with 28 generations of catahoulas in his breeding program, he has a lot to offer for all of us. This conversation is lively, it is informative, and the stories may affect your sensitivities. Live from Uncle Earl's, these are the Dog Men.
Raymond was talking about feeding some lemon and white hounds, Walker hounds.
Yeah. Well, I was talking about growing up, and they're actually being dog men, you know. And we were talking, you and I, Ed, about how the hunting may be on the rise since COVID, but the dog hunter is seemingly being banished. You know, even in the upper echelons, what I've noticed in my state, the upper echelons of the conservation agency is really anti-hunters.
Yeah.
They're not friends of the hunter, and more than that, they're against the dog man. You know, they passed a regulation in Arkansas that you couldn't bring squirrel dogs onto WMAs in the spring of the year because they were afraid that they were going to fetch a baby deer, a fawn, to them. Mm-hmm. Well, statewide, I blew it out to all of them. I said, you know, I've hunted my whole life, and most of your squirrel dog breeds are fast dogs and small dogs. Not all, but, you know, a lot of them. I said, but large breeds or small alike, I've never seen a squirrel dog fetch a fawn.
No.
You know, just never have.
Right.
And so they banned them in the name of really not the fact that they were afraid that they were going to fetch a baby deer. And we've got too many deer anyway.
Well, I just had this conversation the other day with somebody. What that comes from is a memorandum of understanding with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. If they're going to get federal dollars, then they've got to shut that property down during certain times of the year, because there's other lobbying groups that are lobbying for ground nesting birds and all this other stuff. So talking about those lobbying groups, like Delta Waterfowl and Ducks Unlimited, doing huge, I mean, they're giants. They're giants in the industry. And so they got the money, and they got the ear, and they got the influence. So that's a lot of the reason why they shut those WMAs down in the spring.
I mean, the thing is, like, so I mean, when you hear it all the time with deer, I mean, as dog hunters, I mean, me and Raymond are hog hunters. We do not want our dogs chasing deer when we go hunting. Not for the benefit of the deer hunter, for the benefit of
our
ourselves.
benefit.
Sure.
We do not want that. It impedes on our enjoyment of the hunt.
Right.
So we're not doing that, you know.
We spend thousands of dollars to prevent it.
To break them off of it. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. That's part of the training process.
Yeah, there's nothing worse that day. Have a day of hunt and run because you got trashy dogs.
Yeah,
I got the trashiest dogs around.
Yeah, we're not after that.
Yeah.
We're not just hillbillies that are turning dogs loose just hoping they'll chase something.
Sure, right.
Yeah. Well, we are at Uncle Earl's, and what town's this in?
We're in Winfield, Louisiana.
Winfield.
This is the 28th year that this has gone on. It's a huge event. How many dogs do you think are here, Raymond?
Oh, Lord, that'd be they're in the hundreds, I'd say, for sure.
I would guess, I would guess that right now there's probably 600 dogs here.
Probably
it's a huge event.
Mm-hmm.
It's a week-long event.
I call it Daytona Bike Week for hog hunters.
You're pretty close to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a week-long party. We're celebrating the future of hog hunting, but we're also celebrating the heritage that we have in hog hunting. Because this is actually Uncle Earl was actually a Louisiana senator,
right?
Who free-ranged hogs and also hog hunted with dogs, and this is a celebration of his birthday.
Since you mentioned that, what kind of dogs was it that he hog hunted with?
Well, we're in Louisiana. I would imagine it was catahoulas, Raymond. You wouldn't have any connection to them dogs, would you?
Well, no, I'd say not. No, it'd be so far back that I wouldn't know. But for me, I've told a lot of people I'm getting up in years a little bit, but when I go see Jesus one day, I'll be feeding a catahoula dog when I go. I mean, it's just that way, and it's ingrained in my life, my lifestyle. My kids, they all know. Matter of fact, growing up, they always begged, "Can we have some other kind of dog?"
Yeah.
And no was the answer. But
I've heard that same thing. It's like we got dogs, and the kids go to school, and we got dogs at home. Everybody be talking. We just got Dad's hunting dogs. I always had to keep some little ratty dog around for them to run around with. But I got to do some introductions so before we get rolling into this thing too far. So I got the one and only Ed Barnes, Tuskers Magazine. I don't think you need any introduction, Ed.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, knife maker. I mean, like a master bladesmith.
I don't know. I won't,
yes, you are.
I won't claim master bladesmith.
Well, we'll claim it for you. We'll claim it for you, man. Not looking at your knives and stuff. Have you sold out this week, or were they all sold before you got here?
Most were sold before I got here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I enjoy making knives. It comes a close second to hog hunting with dogs.
Yeah. You're just kind of a Renaissance man.
I am a total Renaissance man.
Yeah. Yep.
Write books, make knives, hunt hogs.
Like simple things in life.
Simple things done well.
There you go. So you're a Renaissance perfectionist.
Yeah, I'm really not a perfectionist, but I like to do things well.
Yeah, but you're the type of guy that everything you do well. Just like have you ever done that? I was looking at the pictures of the house you're building, and you did that acid tint on the floor and stuff. Have you ever done that before?
No, it's super easy. Anybody wants to do it, they should just do it. It's not hard. I mean, I always say, like, most things in life are really not hard. Especially, I mean, we live in a golden age where you can do, if you have a desire to do a little bit of research, we have more information
at our
fingertips than anybody else in history.
Yeah.
If you can't do something today, it's because you don't want to put in the effort.
Right.
I mean, the information is all right in front of us. We just have to grab it.
Never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
And then sitting to your left and right across from me is Raymond Plummer from Arkansas.
Famous Catahoula man.
Yes.
Well, now we have migrated up to Branson, Missouri.
But you're from Arkansas.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. Grew up some in Louisiana. I've got family in Catahoulas Parish, Louisiana, and we lived down in Morgan City, on the Gulf down there for a while. But most of my raising was in Arkansas. So,
yeah. Yeah.
And, a Catahoula bloodline man died in the wool. That's just the way it is.
Have you ever had anything else?
You know, I've trained dogs. Shitsome training. I've trained a lot of police dogs. You know, all your breeds that they use for that, whether it's Malinois or Dobermans or Shepherds or whatever is the new dog that they're trying to make the best, police dog ever. And so I've trained a lot of different types of hunting dogs, everything from Labrador Retrievers on down. So I'm not mindless about the breeds. Matter of fact, I'm a dog guy, but with my dogs, I am, we live vicariously through our dogs. And if our dogs do well, we're proud. And if they do bad, we're ashamed and embarrassed, because that's a little piece of us as we've trained our dog and turned him loose out there. And how he performs is a reflection of us. It's a reflection of our character, And I like to tell people that a lot of, the dogs personally that I keep can add, subtract, multiply, and divide. They're cross-trained. If I do hog hunt a lot, and we love that and have done it for years and years and years. But I can also, aside from, and I'm not saying that a plot hound can't do that, because
Better not.
Do what?
Say better not. We'll be wrestling. You look pretty fit.
Hey, let's
You
wrestle.
look pretty fit.
Let's wrestle.
but I keep a treeing genetic in my dogs. I believe that a dog that can tree is a smarter dog. I believe I could prove that. But I can work cattle. I can catch wild cows. I can work dairy cows, not jerk the milk out of them. I can hog hunt with that same set of dogs, squirrel hunt. And I could tell you story after story of doing those very things, and so it was like when my grandfather raised Catahoula dogs. He could step to the porch in the days of open range and send old Lep to the bottoms to gather the cattle, all right? And he could go in and eat supper. He didn't have to worry. In about 30 minutes or so, the cattle would be up in the lot. Well, 2 or 3 good cowboys, because I know, been there and done that, without a dog, it could take 2 or 3 days to do that.
What's that? There's a
good dog on the ground's worth 3 in the saddle.
exactly.
Yep. You said earlier, you were teasing me. You said I owned a plot one time. I owned a Catahoula one time.
Did you?
Yeah.
But it wasn't a Plummer bred dog. I bet you don't.
Well, see, the thing is, Raymond's a Catahoula guy.
Yeah.
I'm a crossbred guy. If it won't happen, but if tomorrow Raymond decided he wanted to be a walker dog guy,
He'd be successful.
he'd be a successful walker dog guy.
Yeah.
We have our favorites, but when a guy knows dogs, he can switch from one to the next. And dogs in general are the same.
Well, and I think it too, in that, it is the innate ability of the man to be able to look at a dog and tell what he can get out of that dog, what he can expect out of that dog. And if he can't do that, he better change games.
Yeah.
I
totally agree with you. Like, I always say that dog men are born. Like, you have to be born with a natural ability to see a dog and see his potential. That does not mean every dog you get is going to be the greatest, but you can see the greatest potential out of each dog you come in contact with.
A dog, a lot of times, they learn off a repetitive response, okay? A lot of people think that a dog don't like the UPS guy because he's wearing a uniform. Has zero to do with it, okay? What it has to do with is the nature of the dog. When the UPS guy's in a hurry and he comes flying up to your house, screeching tires and stops and jumps out quickly and runs to your door, and your dog, nature in him, barks. And when he barks, the guy quickly turns around, drops the package, quickly turns around, runs back to his vehicle and gone. Well, the next day, the guy does it again, and he does it again, until finally the dog's waiting on him, and he knows. And they think, well, he just don't like him because, well, that's not it at all. You've trained him to do that. He does the mailman that way, does the UPS man that way, And
Let's talk about, earlier today you were telling me about, in hog dogs, lots of times we deal with dogs that are on the skittish side. And earlier you were talking about going up to a dog on the chain who's on the skittish side and how to approach that dog and how that's going to affect that dog.
Sure.
Why don't you talk about that for a minute?
Well, there are different natures, and I'm going to look at the Catahoula breed because even some of the books that are written talk about a Catahoula dog being sometimes aloof and shy toward people. Now they can be.
Ours was a little bit.
Yeah, they can be overt toward people, or they can be a little shy, or just not noticeable one way or the other. But if you've got a shy dog, most of the time he's been trained to be shy. Okay. Now there is, people have different characteristics about them. Dogs do too. Okay. Now he can be a little antsy around people or whatever, but say for instance, if I've got a dog that is feigning shyness, okay, I will not tolerate it. I will not allow it. Okay. So one thing that I'm going to do when that dog, if you walk up to a shy dog, oftentimes they'll lay down and roll over and expose their belly. Mm-hmm. That's a sign of submission. Okay. Of not dominance in the alpha order. Okay. So I will not pet a dog that lays down and rolls over on his back expecting you to pet him. I'll stand there, and he will roll around a lot of times until he figures out, wow, this guy's not petting me. And then he'll look at you like, hey, what's wrong? I'm here. If you stand there long enough, the dog will get on his feet. When the dog gets on his feet, then instead of hand down, which is a sign of aggression, come hand up under the dog's mouth and his jaw and rub him a little bit. And after you feel him kind of melt to that, then you can reach around there and pat him a little firm pat on the side. He loves it, and he will come back for it. But if you continue, when that dog, I won't chase a dog. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, the other day, this lady was chasing her dog, and I said, quit chasing your dog. And she said, well, I've got to catch him. I said, go the other way.
Yeah.
And she said, what? I said, start walking the other way.
That's right.
And the dog turned and followed her, see? And so by then, the dog's coming to you. You're not chasing the dog. So they do learn off of repetitive response and things that you teach them. And sometimes people teach dogs things they don't unaware they're teaching them.
Like
where'd you learn all this stuff, Raymond?
From doing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's from doing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And,
it's funny. We were talking this morning. You were talking about that, and I'd never really thought of it in those terms. Mm-hmm. But I do the same thing. Like when I get a skittish dog, I'll go in their kennel and sit there for sometimes hours. Mm-hmm. And I don't push the issue. I don't push myself on the dog. I wait for the dog to come to me. And then I'd never thought about it, and I had never done it on purpose. But like you were saying, when they do come to me, I pet them from the underside instead of coming from the top side.
Well, that ties into, like, that's why you get such good responses when you get a dog. If you'll sit there and you'll hand feed it, and you'll feed it everything that it eats for the first week that you've got it out of your hand, then same thing that Raymond's saying. It's a non-aggressive pose. You're sitting in there on a bucket, and you're allowing the dog to come to you and eat out of your hand.
What I want out of an animal, whether it's a horse, mule, dog, is the same thing. I want that animal formed to what I want them to be. And I pick an animal that I think I can do that with, that I have the best chance with. I adopted some Mustangs from the Bureau of Land Management one time.
Yep.
And I got a 5-year-old stud horse, still had his manhood about him. And I took that horse, named him Nevada, because that's where he come from. I taught that horse to sit, lay, and roll over on command, okay? Used him for everything. If there was anything he didn't want to do, that's what we camped out on.
Yeah, that's what you do.
Yeah, you camp out on it till you get over that, and he understands,
You do the same thing with mules?
Well, a mule, the difference in a mule and a horse is this, and you've probably heard this before. But say, for instance, you load a horse in your horse trailer and you have a little fender bender, okay? Mm-hmm. You take that horse out of that trailer after being beat, banged around back there, he's not going to want to go back in that trailer just as quickly. Yeah. The difference in the horse and the mule is the mule's going to remember who put him in the trailer. So, they're a little different animal, but I do a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I've camped out in water holes. The mule won't cross the creek, wants to jump water. Mm-hmm. We used to go out and ride, and we just let everybody else ride off. And they'd say, "Hey, you coming?" I said, "I'll be there eventually, but this mule is going to walk through this water."
If a mule doesn't want to do something, there's a reason why he doesn't want to do it.
They're smart.
And it involves his personal safety.
That's right.
Well, but when that mule figures out, and that takes time, guys, when that mule figures out that his safety is is in your interest. You want to take care of him. Then he begins to trust you, and then you'll get more out of him.
Yeah.
So.
But hey, I mean, we've kind of skipped over a huge thing here.
Yeah.
And that's children. And all that relates exactly to children.
Oh, we can't go down that road. This isn't a parenting podcast.
And it's not a parenting podcast, but I always say dogs, horses, kids.
Look, I got
if you want to, if you're looking to buy a dog from somebody and his kids are running amok, stay away from them dogs. If he can't train his kids, he sure as hell ain't training them dogs.
I got to tell this story. We were sitting in a parenting class. My
Parenting
wife
class?
Yeah, well, we
won't ask why you were there.
You obviously did something wrong.
I hadn't even started yet, Ed. I got drugged to it, and I hadn't even started. So the church was having this parenting class for new expecting parents. And we go down there, and we're doing this book, and everybody's sharing their feelings and all this stuff. And I'm just sitting there, and I didn't want to be there anyway. And all these people are talking about, oh, when I have kids, I'm going to do this, and I really feel like it's important to do this. And finally, the assistant minister looked at me and goes, Chris, you've been quiet. What do you think? And I said, well, I think training kids is probably about like training dogs. You show them what you want, teach them what you want, reinforce it when they don't do it, praise them when they do good, and everything will be fine. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
And I know we're steering away from a dog line here to children momentarily, but the wife and I.
Well, you were a teacher, weren't you?
I've been a lot of things, brother. I wore a lot of hats. But
what have you done?
Well, we've owned some companies. Owned a reclamation company. I've built custom homes. I was a stock and bond broker. Traded the long bond. I was a youth pastor, minister. Taught chemistry, physics, and biology, and probably a few other things along the line. But we went into. We love children, and the wife and I never thought our lives would go that way, but we ended up fostering children for 10 years. We had almost 100 children come through our house in 10 years.
Goodness.
We adopted 6. We had 2 biological, so we raised 8, and then we had foreign exchange students from Germany, Japan, Taiwan, and I'm missing some because we had about 6 of those. But I've taught Kiwanis Club basketball, Little League baseball, Mighty Might football. So for the kids in our town, I was either the coach, the dad, or the preacher, you know. And here's
just a role model.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and we, of course, we helped with junior achievement. We've done a lot of different things with kids. Mm-hmm. And what I find with children is this. They need a structure of rules. And if they don't have that, they reach until they do find something that checks them up. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes the law and going afoul of the law and different things. But if you set them I used to give them the Barney talk when they came into the house.
The Barney Five talk?
No,
or the Barney
the dinosaur. I tell them, we use our manners here. It's please, thank you, you're welcome, yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am. All right, and if you don't know those, I'll rent you the Barney tape and you can hear it. But that's what we use, and they quickly go from not in a home where they came from, which things were very bad, to using their manners on a regular basis. Yeah. And if you set rules, they conform to them, and then they can flourish because they know the boundaries, and they're safe in that.
Children are just like dogs.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna get all kinds of hate mail. You better explain this.
Yeah, so like my ex-wife, I might go discipline a dog, and it might be pretty severe. And then she would say, "Oh, that dog loves you." And I'm like, "That dog loves me." And she couldn't understand that dog would love me and respect me and show me respect after what I'd done.
Why? Why do you think that is?
Because dogs are pack animals, just as humans are pack animals. Mm-hmm. And we feel comfort when we know what's the word? I mean, we know how things lie.
Sure.
Well, the fear comes in the unknown.
When we're not sure who is in charge, that's when chaos comes in. But when we know who's in charge and when we know the natural order of everybody, it sets everybody's mind at ease. So I would go get pretty rough with a dog, and they would just show me all this love. It's because they know where they – it doesn't matter where they fit. They just want to know where they fit.
You know, and I'm going to turn it back to dogs just a little bit more, but
that's good.
When I got a call from Roger Atkinson one time, and he works for the National Park Service, all right, and he is the enforcement ranger for the Buffalo National River, okay? I've eradicated hogs for them a lot of times when necessary. Roger called me one time, and he says, Plummer, he said, we've had a potload of hogs dropped off here, or 2 potloads out of Texas up here in the middle of the night on the park. He said, can you come help get on them? He said, if we don't get them quick, we'll never get them all. All right. So I show up the next morning down at Deer, Arkansas, well, south of Deer, down at the little place that probably shouldn't even have a name, in the Grand Canyon country of the Ozarks. And I'm collaring dogs up, and the first dog off the tailgate that I collared up was a dog I called Blue Boy, and I let him down, and he went about 35 yards over there from while I was collaring the next dog.
You don't like that blue dog.
Son, I loved him. and hey, there's another side to it, Ed. He loved me. But you know, I tell you, he treated a squirrel, and he was just go. And Roger now, he's highly concerned about this hog problem, and he looks over and sees the old Blue Boy dog treeing a squirrel, and he says, Plummer, he said, what's that dog doing? And I said, well, he's treeing a squirrel. And he said, we're not going to bait any hogs today. I said, Roger, I said, if there's hogs to be baited, we'll bait hogs. I said, Blue Boy, get out from there, let's go. And he fell off that tree, bait 30-something head of hogs that day. Roger couldn't have been more thrilled. But now, if I'd have walked over there, because we're talking about the rules, and if he knows what the rules are, see, he was just checking me. If I'd have walked over there and popped that squirrel out on him, he'd have popped the next one like popcorn, and we'd have been squirrel hunting that day.
Yeah.
Because he would have.
Yeah.
You know, I took him down to South Arkansas on a section farm down that they'd had some hog problems on, and 660 acres is pretty good size, but it's not really big when you're hog hunting. I mean, you can get off of it pretty quick. And there was a deep creek, Hurricane Creek, spelled hurricane, but if you're from the south, it's hurricane. Bordered it, and so the hogs had moved over, and we didn't have permission to be on the other side. And so we had walked and just really covered this section farm pretty close. And I had a bunch of young boys with me in their mid-20s, and they, of course, they wanted to carry their ARs and all this. And I said, no. I said, 22 mag will suffice. You know? So they're all carrying 22 mags. And so we're on the back side of that place, and it's getting late, about 2:30 in the afternoon. And they're hot and sweaty and done warmed up, and they said, man, that's a lot of walking for not even seeing a hog. And I said, well, boys, I said, look, I said, if you want to, obviously the hogs are not on this place. And I said, we can't fabricate a hog. If there's not one here, it's just not here. I said, but if you want to, we can shoot some squirrels on the way out of here. And they said, with what? And I said, well, with that dog right there. And they said, well, he hadn't looked up a tree all day. They said, what makes you think he's going to now? I said, because I hadn't asked him to. And they kind of couldn't believe that. And I looked at old Blue Boy and called him. And I grabbed the limb on the tree and barked like a squirrel and said, get him, son. They like to melted the barrels down on them 22 mags heading back out there. They killed a sack full of squirrels, had a big time. They said, we can't believe that. That dog never even looked up a tree till you told him to. But he knows the rules, see, and he knows he's able. We've worked on it. He knows how. So.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I think, we get pigeonholed on what our dogs are capable of doing. You look at these dogs that do all sorts of things, and to think that you've just got a coon dog, you've just got a deer dog, you've just got a coyote dog. Man, the right dogs can do a lot of different stuff, and they can do it well.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's, like my grandfather, my great-grandfather. I mean, at least I can only speak from Oklahoma, but back in those times, they were not feeding a bunch of dogs. They fed 1, maybe 2 dogs, and that dog could do everything.
Let me speak to that a little, Ed. Here's what happened back in those days, and I think I'm one of the last dinosaurs in that era, but when we had post-depression years, open range, you had oftentimes, in my family at least the case, a mom and a dad and 12 kids in a 2-room shack.
Yeah.
Okay. They couldn't afford to buy sack dog feed, wormer, okay? They couldn't afford to feed a dog that didn't have a purpose and work, okay? So where did they get that? They went to the bloodline man and bought that dog. Now that dog, the bloodline man didn't let any fence jumper breed his dogs because he had a product, even with poor people, that he could sell. See, and if
what's a bloodline man? Lay that out.
Well, to me, and of course there may be different definitions from different people, but sitting in the chair, our family's raised Catahoula dogs for generations. My grandfather and my dad, now even before them, but I was handed a pretty good set of dogs early on, all right? And we've grown that and we've bred that. Now, we have, over the years, outcrossed a time or two. Now, I'm going to probably upset some people, okay, with this statement.
Oh, don't do it. Don't do it.
Well, too late. Too late. You gave me the mic. Okay. But
I like upsetting people.
But, you know, say, for instance, the Catahoula breed. I don't believe the wives' tales that are told about the making of a Catahoula dog. Matter of fact, modern science has disproved it, okay?
Came out of the Red Wolf, Louisiana,
That's,
and what?
They say that Hernando de Soto's war dogs
Spanish.
and the Red Wolf.
The Red Wolf.
You can genetically test a Catahoula dog today. I don't care if it's yours, mine, or somebody else's. And
no wonder everything around here is going
they're
nuts.
bringing in hogs for the two-dog bay-off right now, right in front of us.
Trailer load.
not just hogs, but wild Tuskers.
Good hogs.
Yeah,
but
looking at a 20-foot trailer full of Tuskers right there.
Yeah, and you can maybe hear the dogs in the background all sounding off.
Guarantee it. I was wondering what the heck is going on.
Pretty excited about it. But
go ahead.
But the story goes for the Catahoula breed, and I'm just going to tell you, boys, it's not true.
No,
okay?
It's not.
You can genetically test them. They've never seen a red wolf, okay? They've never seen a greyhound or a mastiff, which is all in the story that you'll hear. When I grew up, they didn't just call them Catahoula dogs. Now, this is really going to set the hair on some people. Now, that's a Southern saying, and you'll have to look that one up. But and I expect maybe you will. But when you look at where these dogs came from, they are a product of the southern states, the poor southern states, post-Civil War era, when we had to have a dog to help put food on the table, catch fur at night, keep the family farm safe from wolves, bears, bobcats, coyotes, whatever, foxes, coons, varmints, from my chickens, from my cattle, from my hogs,
corn,
from those things. Had to protect
from
them.
food.
Sure, absolutely. Out of your corn crop, out of your garden, whatever. You had to have a dog to be able to do that.
And herd cows?
Yes, had to herd your cattle because you had open range. Had to go gather hogs in the spring of the year because you had to earmark your hogs.
That's right.
My grandfathers both have a mark. I've got it in a book at the house that they had registered their mark at the county courthouse for their open range hogs. And every spring you'd go gather those hogs, mark the pigs, and in Arkansas, there's Calhoun County, it's called Hogskin County. It was illegal to take a hog out of the woods without an earmark on him. If you did, it was theft.
Yeah,
it
was theft,
and it was a bad deal. People been killed over it. Okay, but the dogs were developed all across the South. You can go to North Carolina. Okay, a lot of people called them. Oh, this is going to make some people mad. Oh my goodness.
Do it.
A lot
Make them mad.
A lot of people called them leopard curs. Okay, they called them leopard curs. The only people really that called them Catahoula, and I'm not saying that the folks in this great state of Louisiana didn't have a hand and mold what we see as a Catahoula dog today, because they most certainly have, okay? But the Catahoula dog came from the Catahoula Lake region, Catahoula Parish, Louisiana, all right? But Florida, with their cracker curs, which are leopard dogs, by the way, and yellow, okay, have the same story about Hernando de Soto and his war dogs. North Carolina.
Got somebody crawling over here for bird dog.
North Carolina, same story. A lot of leopard spotted cur dogs in North Carolina. They've got the same folklore story.
Well, which plot? Lep's plot.
Right.
Lep's plot, or Plot's Lep, Shep, or whatever they called that thing. He was a leopard dog.
The first outcross on the Plot Hound in the United States
went to Georgia.
Was out of Rayburn Gap, Georgia, and it was a leopard spotted cur bitch.
Yep.
Okay. And he had his own, if you read their book.
The first one that there's a picture of.
Sure. Well, no, actually, they probably not a picture of that first outcross because when they made that outcross off the Plott dogs, they made it to a leopard spotted cur bitch out of Rayburn Gap, Georgia, and the book and the family history of Plott tells that he already had in Rayburn Gap, Georgia, an established working line of leopard spotted cur dogs.
That's right.
Same thing.
I mean, if you really get down to it, the Catahoula, it kind of is. The Walker has kind of been attributed to American as
Fox
an American dog. But really, I think the Catahoula is a more American dog than the.
I think it is a true American dog. Now, here's what I tell people.
Well, now here's where we get down the weeds because the Plott dog is the only. Plott breeders will tell you the same thing about Plott.
Well, they're wrong. I mean, that comes from Germany.
Right.
They did.
The Hanoverian hound.
The Hanoverian hound came from Germany, but the original dogs, what we know as a Plott today, has no European influence.
Yeah, but I would. I mean,
Here we go.
Hands down.
Here we go.
Hands down the and I'm a fan of Plott dogs, but hands down the cat. And I'm not a Catahoula guy.
Right.
Hands down, the Catahoula is far more American than the Plott is.
Well, here's the thing. When God told Adam to name all the animals, okay, we're going to drop back to the beginning. Okay? He didn't say that's a rhinoceros, that's a giraffe, that's an elephant, and that's a Louisiana Catahoula.
Yeah.
He did not say that. It was a dog. Okay.
Right.
God made a dog. Man made the Catahoula. Okay.
Yeah.
And he was developed. And how was he developed? Okay. Here we go. I can prove it, okay? Now, the bloodline men, back in those days when it was important for your grandpa to have a working dog that was a meat dog that served a purpose, he could afford to table scrap that dog and feed that dog, okay? He had to have a purpose, all right? So for the bloodline man, what was his job was he had to have a dog, for one thing, that had drive. No, you guys are going to have me banished. But
it's good.
The
This is
dog
what we talk
out here
about all the
that
time.
has the most drive, and you'll see them here today. There's several of them. I've noticed them. Is a bird dog. Back when we had birds in this country, men genetically bred bird dogs. You say what kind? Well, English pointers, German short-hair pointers,
Right.
or wire-mouth pointers. All right. So those dogs had drive. They'd work in the field all day long, flushing birds. All right. Now, they had to have a dog that had to have a nose. So there comes the hound influence. If you look at a Catahoula dog, if you look at my bloodline and somebody else's, you'll notice some of them have a little longer ear, like a houndy ear. That's because they got hound in them. You say, what kind of hound? Every kind of hound. Yeah. Plott hounds, blue ticks, red bones. All right. And we can even get into the genetic part of it. If you look at the hound breeds, okay, the Plott hound, obviously, I used to have a Plott.
Yeah, one.
But I had the one.
And I have one Catahoula.
But even if you're going to bench show a Plott hound, his ears, the problem with a Plott hound is his ears don't reach the end of his nose. And if a bench show judge is going to judge that hound, that's one of the first things he's going to do is grab his ears, pull it to the end of his nose. If it don't come to the end of his nose or past, he's docked.
That's how you tell how open they're going to be. That's what we always do.
And the longer the ears,
what are you talking about?
They'll blue tick you every time their foot hits the ground. They'll open. Okay,
Yeah.
but
I got those too.
But we had to have a dog that not only had drive, but he had to have a nose. So now, if you look at the color palette of a Catahoula dog, there's what we call blue leopard, which is merle. That's going to make some people mad too. And then there's a red leopard. Okay. Now, where did those colors come from? If you look at the blue tick hound, which was developed in the great state of Louisiana, if you look at the red bone hound, the red bone hound is the only member of the hound breed. Now, he was bred out of bloodhounds, but he's the only member of the hound breed that is web-footed to the tip of his toes. Now, if you listen to folks in Louisiana, they'll tell you that the Catahoula evolved in the swamps, and that's why he's web-footed to the tip of his toes. That's not true, okay? That's not true. There had to be a genetic marker that come into those dogs that brought that web foot. comes from a red bone hound.
I've heard all this about the Catahoula.
Okay.
All these things about the Catahoula that you're saying, I've heard of.
It's funny because, like, my great uncle, one of my great uncles, Tom Barnes, born in 1914, and he free range hogs in northeast Oklahoma, and I was raising Catahoulas at the time, and I go by his house, and he had Catahoulas, but he didn't know them as Catahoulas.
Sure, right.
He said they were stock dogs.
Sure.
Well, he started since the time I was little. He would describe these dogs to me. I didn't realize until I was up in my early 20s. I'm like, these are Catahoulas.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to him one day, and I was like, oh, so you had Oh, no, I never had Catahoulas.
I had stock dogs.
I said, yeah.
Well,
I'm like,
you can talk about the original mountain cur the same way.
Yeah, sure.
There's people that say that the original mountain cur in Appalachia stepped off the Mayflower, and never been anything bred. That's absolutely impossible to have happened. Mountain people, and even just rural America, wasn't wired that way. You weren't going to travel 50 miles to go breed your dog to something.
You could have a famous dog of any breed back in those days, and he might be famous for 3 counties.
Yeah.
Not the whole state or the United States, because we didn't have the internet back then. That shrunk the world. You know?
Well, my Uncle Tom, but if you said cur, so I would start, he didn't know Catahoula, so I would start laying out the other names because they got a million names.
Oh, sure.
And if you said cur, he was in his mid to late 80s. He would bow up and want to fight you if you said cur. But they were obviously Catahoulas. And then we got to talking, and he had bought them from Mr. Stodgill.
Tom Stodgill. I knew him well.
And Stodgill used to travel and sell dogs. And I kind of finally pulled it out of him, and that's where he got them, was from Stodgill. And I'm like, they're Catahoulas. Well, he just knew them as stock dogs.
But where did they come from then? Okay. If they didn't come from the wolf and they didn't come from
they've got bird dog in them. They've got hound in them. They've got pit bull in them.
But let me dial it back and get the question out here. You've got them in Florida. You got them leopard cur over in Georgia, Louisiana.
They're all through the South.
Where did they come from? Where was because those are all places of Spanish influence. So did the Spanish have?
Here's where the original, and I think maybe if you boil it down, what you're looking for is because of genetics. Where did the Merle come from? Okay, where did the Merle come from? It came from a French dog, the French Buceron.
Yep.
Okay. Now, Tom Stodgill was a friend of mine, and he actually got a hold of a letter that was dated in the late 1800s from a couple of Cajuns down South Louisiana, and they had imported a couple of French Bucerons into South Louisiana. Okay. Now, these Bucerons in France at that time, now if you look them up on the internet, they come in 2 colors. They'll come in a blue merle or a black and tan. Okay, so that's why I mentioned the red bone bringing in the fail melanin to make the red leopard dogs, because red color had to come from somewhere.
And how many leopard curs have you seen that have black and tan markings?
A lot.
Oh, yeah,
absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. And another thing, and you'll see that in my bloodline of Catahoula dogs, see, a French Buceron has to at least, now we're not talking about maximum, in the least they have to be double dew-clawed in the back to be registered as a purebred French Buceron. Okay? A lot of my dogs, now not all of them, but a lot of them, and it's a throwback, will have double or triple dew claws in the back, and that comes from the Buceron influence. Okay, so it's a mixture of dogs, and what Tom did was he ordered a set. When he read that letter, he ordered a set. He called me after the fact. He said, "Plummer, you're not going to believe it." He said, "Now if you look at the herding dog breeds, which I don't think that a Catahoula really is, okay." Because if you look at your herding dog breeds, a lot of them are collie-type dogs or shepherd-type dogs. They've got a specific way of herding and moving sheep or cattle.
Right.
That's not a Catahoula dog, okay?
Catahoulas are too rough on sheep.
It's more of a prey drive, I believe, with a Catahoula dog. Now, it's way, in my mind, in some sense, in open pasture or wood lot situations is more effective.
They're head dogs instead of heel dogs.
Well, and they will take a position. If you say, for instance, working cattle, and you've got a head dog, one working the head, and you add one to the pack, he'll take his position. And then before long, if you keep, you'll have them on both sides and the front, and they'll drive effectively. But it's a different technique and a style.
Right.
The French Buceron works exactly the same way as a Catahoula dog.
Okay, so let's fast forward to the modern day. If we're gonna say that the leopard and the Catahoula, an even influence in the plot.
Well, I mean, when you say leopard, like that, and that's a whole other can of worms. Like
Exactly, that's what I was going to get to. Where did the tree come from? Because they're your dog's natural tree dogs?
Now here's what happened. See, when I was a boy, these dogs were multi-purpose dogs. Okay, they treed coons at night, squirrels in the daytime, bayed hogs, worked cattle, did it all. Okay,
cur dogs.
We expected that out of them, absolutely. All right, but with the change of demographics in the United States and prosperity,
That's where I want to go.
Okay,
Yeah.
we started getting away from the small farms.
Yeah.
Okay. So things changed, and suddenly there wasn't as much need for a Catahoula dog. And I've watched it through the decades, the changing in the Catahoula breed, okay? And used to, now you were talking about Florida and North Carolina, Georgia. All right, I used to, when I was a young man, I could look at a Catahoula dog or a leopard cur dog and tell you where he come from, okay? I could tell you the breeder. Okay, because they were breed specific. You could look at them, and his had a little different look than mine. Mine had a little different look than somebody else.
Sure.
The internet's kind of melded all that, and it's more difficult to do. But you knew Chester Wager, did you?
Chester
Wager. All right.
I know Wager dogs.
All right. Well, that's where they come from.
Yeah.
All right. Chester. The last time I talked to Chester, I think he was 82 years old, and I asked Chester, and he was from Bow Bridge, Louisiana, and I said, Mr. Chester, I said, where did you get your first Catahoula dog? And he did, like you was talking a minute ago, he did not say, I got my first Catahoula dog from so-and-so. He said, I got a little black and tan cur bitch from my father-in-law that was working cattle on the Atchafalaya River Basin and loading them on barges off the levee, and he had some good cow dogs. Mm-hmm. He never called them a Catahoula at all.
Yeah.
And the ones he got to begin with weren't even leopard. They were black and tan, okay? And now he went on to breed. He's one of the great influences of the Catahoula breed today. I've even got a little Wager blood in my dogs. It's one of the outcrosses we did do back in the probably mid-'80s, early 80s.
Probably. I mean,
or late 80s.
We're sitting here at Uncle Earl's. Probably half the. I mean, we're at a Catahoula event.
Mm-hmm. Well, right. There's more Catahoulas here than anything else.
90% of the dogs that go in that pen are Catahoula. And probably half of those go back to Wager.
Probably so.
Well, at one point.
Right. But what Chester did, Mr. Chester was a fine man. He told me, he said, I took that dog, and he told me that he called her Pups. That was her name. And he didn't say, I went to see if I could find me another Catahoula dog to breed her to. He said, I got to searching for good cow dogs. And he actually went over into Texas and found Mr. King over there that had a renowned cow dog and bred her, okay? And so in 79, when they started the NALC, that's when they all gathered their dogs and went down there and had them registered. That was the foundation dogs for the National Association of Louisiana Catahoulas. So those dogs were bred by bloodline men for production, for work. And what Chester did, because Chester was not a coon dog guy, he was not a squirrel dog guy, he bred hard driving cow dogs. Okay, so in the late 80s, mid 80s, late 80s, early 90s, I saw a change in the Catahoula breed as a whole. And what that change was we saw more cow dogs that would not look up. Now, and I believe you being a plot man dog, you'd know this, that there is a genetic in a dog that gives them the ability to think, to look up.
Yeah,
okay?
a lot of dogs don't know the world exists above their heads.
A lot of dogs maybe would track a coon, but they'll track all the way around the ground, never figure out he went up a tree. Okay.
Yeah, I've got other dog. Yeah, I've seen other dogs, breeds of dogs that will track, but the tree, that's what separates the hound.
Right. And now those were good dogs for what they were, and there was a need in the market at that time for cow dogs. All right. Over the years, and then on the onset of the bay dogs. Okay. Now, I'm at the biggest, right now we're sitting here at the biggest bay competition in the world for hog bay dogs. And it has been a blessing of sorts, but there has been maybe a little bit of effect in a negative way on the Catahoula breed due to the bay pens.
Well, I want to get to that, but I got to ask you this first. So do you think that the needs of different regions changed the leopard, Catahoula, whatever we're going to call it? Do you think because of distinct needs in certain regions, it kind of took that track more,
absolutely, yeah,
more than other
sure,
areas?
Absolutely.
I mean, it has to. I mean, if we stop, there's people who are stuck in history and want to keep a dog what it used to be, which I have respect for that. I love history. But this is all fluid, and we change from what we need for a dog to do.
Yeah.
So if we stop that and freeze that in history, we're killing that dog.
We've got a dog
and that's one of the great
relevant
things about a Catahoula is a Catahoula has made it from the 1700s into the 2000s and is still relevant.
They're able to mold and evolve to the need at hand.
Because it's a cur dog.
Sure.
I mean, and when you get down to the base of it, my great Uncle Tom, like I said, if you said cur dog, he was 89 years old, and he'd stand up and ball his fist up and want to punch you. Oh. Because cur used to mean that was a worthless,
a mongrel dog,
right.
Curtailed dog,
worthless dog,
right?
But just as the dogs that we raise, that word has changed in its meaning, and when I say cur, I mean a dog that can do what I need it to do, no matter what that is.
Yeah, we've all heard that term, mangy cur.
Yeah,
but there's a term of endearment for a dog man. It's like, oh, he keeps good cur dogs. That means something.
Well, and with Ed in Oklahoma, his need for a specific dog is different than mine. See, because he hunts a different terrain, the outlay of the land's different, the vastness of it's different. I hunt the Ozark Mountain region primarily. My dogs, you can take a flatland dog that hasn't hunted the mountains and turn him out, and he may be a hog dog. But he humps up and down a few of them mountains, and it'll jerk the want to out of him pretty quick.
I'm in the foothills of the Ozarks, so I'm pretty close to you.
But when you see in different regions a different need for a dog, and what we've done in this hog hunting industry is we've educated the hogs. The hogs that we see today are not the old open range hogs that we used to have.
Yeah,
now we've got a European influence in these hogs, and a hog's very intelligent. And if you've got dogs that haven't got enough bottom end in them to run a hog to a bay, or what we commonly call a running catch dog, something that has enough bite power to stop a hog, well, a hog knows all I got to do is run. And if I run long enough, they'll quit.
Right.
Okay. Well, if you've got the right dogs, they don't quit. See.
Yeah.
But we've trained them to think that that's the case because there's a lot of guys with, how should I say, not as good at dogs out there that allow them to escape. And if you ever allow them to escape one time, well, he's smarter next time. See.
That's right.
And it ups the game. But,
yeah. But I think of the word cur in a totally different way than my great uncle. I think when I hear cur, I think intelligence. Where it used to, that wasn't the connotation that came across was intelligence, but
right,
like my great grandfather, I've got a picture with him and his horse and his dog, and his dog was a collie type dog, and one of my uncles who knew the man and the dog was telling me, he's like, that dog was amazing. He's like, that dog herded cows, treed squirrels, bayed hogs.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what a cur is. A cur is a dog can do anything, where in the past, a cur used to be a dog who could do nothing. Sure. That's what they thought of it. When you said cur, that's what.
Well, I think the name is the same as the dogs have evolved.
Yeah.
And so if there is any evolution at all, it's in that.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
Right. Let's talk.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, let's talk about bay pen versus hunting versus what this event has done?
One thing that the bay pens have done has brought up new interest in, say, for instance, the catahoula breed. Okay, and kind of like what I was talking about there a minute ago, the requirements of what it takes to make a bay pen dog is oftentimes totally different than what it takes to make a woods dog. You know, because here we've got dogs that are scored to where you want them close to that hog. You can't get within a certain distance or they'll be barred or docked, not barred, but docked on their points. They've got to bay tight, and they've got to bark as fast as they can bark within reason and not take their eyes off that hog. But in that, for my purpose, because I want a broad spectrum dog. I want a dog that we can take to any task. Okay, if somebody, and Ed knows this, but there are people that specifically breed bay pen dogs for competition, and they do not hunt their dogs. All right. Now I've seen people bring dogs on a hunt that they bought that was a bay pen dog, and he won't hunt his way across the street. But he'll sit up on a hog a half-inch off his nose and throw slobber as fast as he can. You know, he's got that part down. They bred him to do that, and they're doing that part very well. But for me, I want that dog, because if we're going to pass on, and that's back to that bloodline thing, if we're going to pass on a finished product, a good product to future generations, somebody has to be the conservator of the estate. I mean, we've got to watch and make sure we're keeping those good genetics and those things back in those dogs. And so when I send a dog to somebody that's got my name on it, it's very important to me. I may send it to a friend of mine or somebody else or whatever, but if that dog doesn't work, he's got my name on it because I live vicariously through him. See?
I mean, basically what we've, hog baying evolved because hog hunters got,
like we all do. If me and Raymond went hunting, we'd probably, maybe not the first time, but probably the fifth time, Raymond would be like, my dog's better than yours. I'm like, no, my dog's better than yours. So that's where this sport that we're sitting at, that's where that came from.
It's competition.
This
it's the same way with competition coon hunting, Ed.
To a degree, but not quite as far. So, I mean, this came from like, okay, well, you think your dog's better than mine? Well, let's set up a competition and let's see whose is better, And
we're giving competition coon hunters are hunting for $100,000 every month.
Yeah.
Giving away. Well, I'm sorry, they're giving away a truck every month.
Yeah.
In pro sport and stuff like that. So, I mean, I'd have to argue with you that not to the extent that you guys have, but my point was this: I don't care whether you've ever entered a competition hunt or not. If I raise this dog and I train this dog, when I was just starting out, John Ashby and I would be out there hunting, and we'd be keeping score in our own heads, whose dogs did what and how they did them and stuff like that.
I mean, I'm not a competitive person. Okay, so I've got 2-3 guys that I hunt with all the time. And like I say, I'm not a competitive person at all. So like when I go hunting and the guys I hunt with, we think of ourselves as more of one unit than 4 different dudes who have 4 different sets of dogs. So I'm proud when the dogs do good, even when they're not my dogs, because we've all kind of, in our group, we've all had a hand in training these younger dogs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
These dogs might belong to this guy and that guy, but we've all been hunting together the whole time, and we've all kind of...
Each one of you just has a set of dogs you're responsible for feeding and taking care of.
Yeah, I mean, we feed these dogs, but we've all trained these dogs together,
and
it's more of to me, it's more of a community thing. So, but I'm not a competitive person. But you come here, so what I'm getting at, so this evolved to see who's got the best.
Yeah.
But like anything, like competition coon hunting, over the years, you get a competition with money involved, and people are going to start breeding dogs to the competition and not to the hunt.
Absolutely.
And then after 20, 25 years, it evolves to where you get dogs that are bred to the competition to win money and they've gotten so far away from the original
I think
thing.
it goes back to what you were saying about regionally it can happen, a different function or use for a dog, and a dog maybe takes a little different direction, and, I hate to say this, but one of the things that has really hurt the Catahoula breed is what I call the hobby breeders. And the curse of the Catahoula dog is they probably got the largest color palette of any dog breed.
Yeah, it's terrible.
And so they can come in just this array of colors, and then they have these beautiful glass eyes and things. And so a lot of people, they want a Catahoula dog to look like a Catahoula dog, but definitely don't act like one. Okay, they want it to be like their French poodle that'll sit on the couch with them and watch TV. Well, I tell people to call a Catahoula dog a dog is like calling a game rooster a chicken. Okay, the fact is a game rooster is a chicken. He's just the most different chicken you're ever going to run into. And if you've got a well-bred Catahoula dog, that's the way he is too. You either give him a job or he'll find one, and typically the one he finds is the wrong one.
That's exactly right.
So,
I've said that about border collies. I said that about the Catahoula we had. And any high drive dog, if you don't find a job, they're going to find one. That could be chasing cars. That could be killing your chickens. That could be chewing the siding off your house. I've had it happen with all of them. That you don't get a job for them.
Yeah, absolutely. But a lot of people they don't think about that. They just want the dog. They want a dog, and he's beautiful. I want him. And then they get this grizzly bear home and don't realize what they've got. And, what are we going to do with this thing? I mean, he's just killed the neighbor's cat and, or something terrible, and now we have to deal with that. Yeah. Pick a different dog.
Right, exactly. But I just saw the dog for him, that French bulldog walking down through. That'd be a great dog for him. So.
Yeah, I mean, the bay pen, it's amazing to watch. I mean, I don't discount the bay pen side of it. They've trained dogs to stay 6 inches from a hog's nose and take a charge without making a loop, and that's amazing. But like I say, it's gotten so far from the hog hunting side that it's become its own thing.
Oh, it is.
And not to discount this, because that has its own.
Can you still reach into that genetic pool and pull out what you need?
Not really.
If you did, it would not. I don't think it would be an immediate thing unless it was just kind of a freak. If you did pull out of something here, and you wanted to turn it back to its original purpose, there'd have to be some breeding and training to gain back what we've lost, or at least what we've changed the purpose of.
There's pro guys down here who are going to spend $10,000 in entry fees this week that do hog hunt, but they have for the most part they have their hog hunting dogs and their bay pen dogs,
competition bay dogs.
There's a few, not very many, but a few that will do both.
But you could take a bay pen, say we'll talk about a Catahoula. You could take a bay pen Catahoula dog, a woods Catahoula dog, or some hobby breeder's Catahoula dog, and set them beside each other, and you can't physically look at them and tell the difference.
No, no.
It's only when you put them to purpose that you find out.
And that's that's where this sport is changing the last 3 years. Is that so? Today, I helped a woman friend of mine run in the Sportsman class. So used to this was just totally pros. Now you got the pro class, then you got what they call a woods class, which is guys who are going to hunt them dogs, but they're also here to bay them dogs. And then you got the sportsman's class, which is guys who only hunt their dogs. They've never been to a bay pen. And like on the Sportsman, you can enter a sportsman dog for $30, where a woods class or a pro class dog is going to cost you $190.
Yeah.
So they're opening it up. They've realized this like kind of divide, this split.
That's cool.
And they're opening it up to where new guys can come into this,
still have a function. They still want to come. They want to see. I've always thought about, what would my dog look like? How would he be scored in a bay pen?
Yeah.
I've only been a hog hunter Now I can go to Uncle Earl's
Yeah.
and enter that class.
Yeah.
That's forward thinking right there.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it is. And and me and Pat and Jake have been talking about this for years, and that's where it comes from. Is that you have to introduce new blood into this sport, or it's going to die just like fox pens.
Well, it's like NASCAR. You know, you look at NASCAR, and then you've got late models, and you've got sprint cars. You know, a sprint car guy's not going to show up at Talladega next week and compete
and win. Yeah.
and win.
Yeah.
So there you go. You know, so Uncle Earl's has seen that need and made it.
They're thinking about the future and how to grow this sport or keep it as big as it is now. And to do that, you have to bring new people in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean I'm sure there might be some fox events that are as big as this. I've never been. This is the biggest dog event I've ever been to.
Yeah, Autumn Oaks in Richmond, Indiana. The Coonhound event is huge.
Huge.
Yeah, they'll enter, 11, 12. I think the biggest year they had 1,200 dogs or so.
Yeah.
Entered. So, I mean, it's huge.
I mean, this week we're running in the 2-dog. There was 251 pairs. The 1-dog, there was like 143 dogs. I mean,
but that's still impressive.
It's huge
for a hog hunting event. I think it's something that has a lot of value. If nothing else, just getting people together.
Yeah, I mean, hog hunting doesn't have the ancestry that coon hunting or fox hunting has in America. It's growing. I mean, those sports are dropping while coon hunting or hog hunting's on the rise.
You know, I don't know. I've not done the polling myself, but I've heard in the last few years, prior to COVID at least, that the number one fastest rising dog sport in America was hog hunting.
Yeah.
You know, it's really put a shot in the arms to some of these hunters. You know that while now we've got something, and I will tell you this, and Ed could probably testify to that as well. If you don't want to get hooked on it, don't ever start trying.
Yeah.
Don't try it,
Yeah.
because it'll get in you and on you, and then you can't quit. So,
well, I mean, it's kind of like running foxhounds in the open, coyote dogs, running dogs. I mean, that's a dying sport because I mean, it's not high excitement. When I haven't done it in a long time, but when I was a kid, it was a bunch of old men
sitting around a fire
on the side of a dirt road, drinking whiskey and
saying,
arguing about whose dog was in front.
Whose dog's in front, right?
Well, a lot of new kids didn't get into that.
It wasn't fast-paced enough.
It wasn't
for 'em.
fast-paced.
Yeah, we used to have a coyote.
And, coon hunting is kind of on the wane. It's not that I know so many hog hunters right by my house that were coon hunters, younger kids, and they went coon hunting or they went hog hunting one time, and they're done with coon dogs.
It's also our game departments are making it. They're not making it easy, but they know that there's a problem with hogs. So the wild hog is the number one enemy in Texas, and the expansion.
Yeah, but they're not making it easy for us. Like
you would think they would.
That's why I said they're not really making it easy, but they understand that there's a problem, and then they throw up a bunch of roadblocks to make. In Indiana, you can't hunt hogs with a dog.
Oh, I mean, they throw up roadblocks constantly, but it doesn't even matter because hog hunting is.
We have a
exciting
population of hogs, and
it's adrenaline.
Oh, the adrenaline surge with hog hunters like no other.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a little story right quick. I had several guys from church that wanted to go hog, or asked me actually to go to a high fenced enclosure down in Texas and go hunt. And I said, no, thank you. They said, well, we thought you was a hog hunter. And I said, look, if he don't have a dog throwing slobber in his face, I care nothing about it. And so I invited them after they got back to go with me one day, and we went over off Table Rock Lake over there, and a buddy of mine from Eastern Arkansas, he's raised my bloodline of dogs his whole life, was with us, and he's about 6'2" and pretty skinny, but he knows my dogs pretty well, and kind of like your buddy should hunt with you, And so we kicked out, and we baited 3 boar hogs early, and one of them went in the cave. I'd crawl in the cave, because they go to the hardest places, and when you're crawling into a black dark cave where you can stick your finger in your eye and can't see it coming, it's kind of gnarly, when you're hearing a boar hog in there grunting and dog crying and dogs crying, and so anyway, we got we got the first 3 boar hogs killed, and we wasn't very far from the truck. And I told them guys, I said, man, for the Ozarks, I said, that's an amazing day. We're within a good walk to the truck, 3 boar hogs, 10:30 in the morning. Let's call it good. And I looked around, and that old blue boy dog was gone. And I said, did y'all see where that blue boy dog went? And one of them guys says, well, he went over that hill right there last time I seen him. And me and my other buddy, he says, oh, no. And we go and just lean into the wind and just barely, you think that maybe you can hear, in the wind. He's way out there. And I said, oh, no. So we had to go. Well, I had another gentleman that he was just getting started hog hunting, and he had bought him a couple of dogs, and he was running the video that day. Well, we bayed. The Ozarks are famous for having chain bluffs around the tops of the mountains, and we bayed this hog on a west-facing bluff, and it probably came out 20 foot from the face of the bluff, and then down. It dropped about 4 foot down, and then went on down the mountain. But it's right at the top of the mountain, and he weighed about 350 pounds. Well, I had no desire to pack a 350-pound hog all the way out of the mountains when I already had 3. So I said, look, let's catch the dogs and get them out of here. Well, Jerome says, look, about that time, these hogs can be super fast. The hog jumps out, and he gutted one of Jerome's dogs, just boom, and we had 6 dogs on him. He gutted one, just dropped his guts, all right? And Jerome says, my God. And then he moved so fast, he hit another one of Jerome's dogs, and he nutted him, okay? One of them was swinging on the cord, and out he is. He hit the third one of Jerome's dogs. Now, I got 3 in there, and he's got 3. He smashed him up against the bluff, broke some ribs. He's out. And Jerome says, by God, he said, let's catch them dogs. He's putting us out of the business. And so we jump up there. Now, this Tim is videoing. The hog breaks and runs down the bluff. Well, now, I'm about 1 step behind Jerome when that hog turns around and comes back through my dogs like a torpedo coming back at us. Well, you don't ever run downhill on a hog. You can't outrun one. I went up that bluff like a cat squirrel. I'm holding onto the rock face, and Jerome is a flatlander, and he went off that bench going downhill trying to get them long legs unwound, and that hog run him down. And now it was cold, January, and he had Carhartt coveralls, blue jeans, and thermals on. Hog hooked him in the straddle, threw him about 8 foot in the air. Okay, he lands in a sack of himself, and I run down there and grabbed him. All right, and he's holding both hands over his crotch. Well, I've done seen him nut that other dog, And I said, "Boy, are you all right?" And he opens his hands up, and blood runs out right below his right testicle. It didn't get his testicle, and I said, "Boy, you better hold up." I said, "You got a femoral artery in there. You could bleed out."
Right.
Well, Tim comes up there, and I said, "Did you get that on video?" He said, "By God, no." He said, "If my wife saw that, my kids would never get to go." Well, so I said, "You watch him. Don't let him bleed out. I'm going to get the dog." And so I headed down the mountain, come up the other side. We bayed the hog again. Well, I'm not big on calling old Blue Boy off of a hog. Now, I can call him off cattle, but he had never had called him off a hog. And so I called to him, and he looked at me, and when he looked at me, boom, that hog hit him. And, Bud, I mean just immediately, I pulled out and shot that hog right between the eyeballs. Well, old Tom Stevens was sitting right beside me when I shot the hog right between the eyes. You can see the hole. And the hog just wound his head up and boom, took off. And Tom says, "You shot that hog right between the eyes," and he just ran off. I said, "Yeah, well, let's go kill him." And so we went on down and killed the hog. And I come back, and Jerome is poking the guts back. And this is probably terrible for your podcast, but he's poking the guts back in his hog, in his dog.
An hour and a half podcast down the tube.
And so I said, I walked up there, and he says, "Boy," he said, I know what you think of me now." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Look, that hog gutted one of my dogs. You didn't shoot him." He said, "That hog nutted one of my dogs. You didn't shoot him. That hog cut me, and you didn't shoot him." He said, "But he cut that Blue Boy dog, and you shot him quick." I said, "Jerome," I said, "good hunting partners are dime a dozen. Good hunting dogs hard to find."
That's one of the best things about hunting with a dog is if I'm hunting with a gun and I get tired, I'm finished, I just go home. Hunting with a dog, You don't have that option.
No, that's right.
We are there from start to finish, and we don't even decide when the finish is.
Sure.
That's right.
I care to
That ties into a podcast we just dropped this week called Sacred Pursuit, where we talked about fair chase. Well, it wasn't this week. It was a couple weeks ago. But with T.L. Jones, we talked about people that want to say that hunting with dogs isn't fair chase.
It's
like,
the
you gotta be
fairest
kidding
chase
me.
there is. It's nature.
We're
just standing behind nature a little bit.
Yep.
Sure.
But guys, we better wrap this one up. Man, it's been a great conversation. It's been awesome.
Yeah, we could.
I just kind of pushed the record button and let you guys talk.
Yeah, we could go for hours. I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm
Absolutely.
Sure. You know,
Absolutely.
But we appreciate it. I do. Chris, appreciate you allowing me to come
You
on your
bet.
podcast with you, and hopefully I didn't get you too deep in the weeds with some of your listeners there. But
No, not at all. These guys are all hunters. We'll probably, it is what it is. It's real life, and we tell the truth on this podcast. So for sure.
Yeah.
Ed, what you got planned? What's going on at Tuskers?
Oh, we're gonna sit here for a couple more days and go home and rest for a couple weeks. Been out here all week.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to check it out next year. Like I always tell people, I told you, Chris, like even if you're not a hog dog guy, if you're a dog hunter,
Oh yeah.
you come to Earl's, you are gonna have a fun time. It doesn't matter if you're a coyote hunter,
Sure.
beagler,
Absolutely.
squirrel hunter.
Well, dog people just like to get together, and
Yeah,
and
I mean, we have fun. We tell, and it's all the same. We're all in the same boat.
Yeah.
Squirrel hunter, hog hunter, don't matter.
Well, anybody that is a dog person that enjoys the dog hunting sports, I don't care if you're a duck hunter, you've got to appreciate the work ethic and the training and the effort that these men have put in and women have put into their dogs and the dogs themselves. So
I mean,
bet.
what I always say is like, okay, so I'm a hog hunter. I run squirrel dogs a little bit. I don't care about hog. Like, I'm after superb dogs. I just happen to judge my dogs off of a hog because I think it's a really good for where I live and what I've got to judge my dogs against. I think a hog is the best thing to judge them against.
what does a hog offer you? Oh, well, I guess we're not going to cut this off. We're going to keep rolling. So what do you judge? Because that's too good of a question. Leave it laying. What does a hog offer you to be able to judge the quality of your dog?
First and foremost, a hog offers me the opportunity to judge my dog on drive. Mm-hmm. Their heart, their gameness, how willing they are to stick with something that's hard for a long time. To me, a squirrel can't offer that. A rabbit can't offer that. A bear or mountain lion could offer that probably, but where I live geographically, I don't have bear and lion in a population good enough for me to regularly go out and judge my dogs against that. But that's what I'm after. I'm not after a hog. I'm after superb dogs.
I think what has happened though, Ed, a hog or swine is highly intelligent, and we have not only developed our dogs, but we've actually developed the hogs to be a greater challenge.
Oh, yeah.
And so I tell people they can run like a deer, climb like a mountain goat, fight like a grizzly bear. What's there not to love in that?
Yeah, I mean, the hogs that me and you chased today are not the same hogs that my
absolutely
grandpa
not. Right.
chased in 1960.
Right.
They're a totally different species.
And we've done that to them by not so natural selection.
Yeah.
The hunting sport has driven the species to be what they are today.
But you know what I mean? Like, so I'm vice president of the Oklahoma Dog Hunters Association. So I go to a lot of different dog hunting events, be it bird dogs, squirrel dogs, rabbit dogs, hog dogs, coon dogs, box dogs. And the underlying factor in all those dog sports, it's not really about the game. It's not really about the rabbit.
It's not about killing the
No,
game.
it's about superb dog. It's about dogs that can do a job really well. Mm-hmm. So we're all just after superb dogs.
Yeah.
We just measure them against different game.
Right.
So if hog hunting becomes illegal in the next 10 years, am I not going to have any dogs? Hell yeah, I'm going to have dogs.
I'm just going to find a different game to measure those dogs against because the hog means nothing to me. I mean, I eat them, but I don't give a shit about a hog.
Right.
Hey, Chris, if you don't mind, I'm going to plug this just a little bit. I wrote a poem, and you wouldn't think of an old guy like me to write poetry, but I did write a poem. And I'm going to read it, and I think it encompasses a lot about what we've been talking about. I called it Old Blue. Imagine that.
He might like that dog a little bit.
He might. He left his buddy bleeding out on the side of the mountain to shoot a hog.
Right to save the dog, no doubt. I could tell a few more along that line, too. But it goes something like this. The last of the kids had left the farm. There was an echo in the house and a pretty lonely barn. Varmints had gotten into the chickens. Eggs they were a few. The wife sang hymns from a lonely window view. That ornery longhorn bull had torn through the fence and left for the other side. The neighbors' calves will now be sold for bucking stock, both far and wide. Wild hogs have come up out of the river bottoms looking for food along the way. They gobbled up my corn crop and left only divots where there should be hay. Farming profits were down and laborers were few. Chores were piling up. What's an old cowpoke to do? What I needed was help for very little pay. Maybe a dog would work if I could just get him to stay. When asking around at the local feed store, a man's name came up that raised dogs of legend and lore. Cur dogs are the breeding, only the bloodline man knew. There were rumors of wolves, hounds, bulldogs, and maybe a bird dog or two. He sold his dogs to rodeo stock contractors, farmers, and ranchers alike. He sold them for hog dogs, coon dogs. Yes, these dogs were bred for grit, all right. Leaving the co-op with fresh directions on my mind, thoughts danced in my head of the perfect dog that I would find. The stories were mingled with expectations and popping of gravel far behind. The road was full of cattle guards, mud holes, switchbacks, and low-water gaps. Now to meet this fiery-eyed man dressed in cowboy hat, boots, wild rag, and chaps. Instead, I found him dressed in overalls, all bent and gray and old. All the dogs sounded the alarm. There were even more than I was told. The dogs were black, white, red, yellow, brindle, and blue. They had eyes of brown, white, blue, green, and amber, too. Some were bobtailed, some were long. Some were fine-made, some were strong. But for all their differences, whatever they may be, all the dogs had an appearance of similarity. The old man had more passion and knowledge about dogs than any 50 men would. The solution to my problem ended up costing more than a springing heifer should. I was lucky he had just gotten him back because twice he had sold. The dog worked himself out of a job, or so he was told. Tied all alone out back at the end of a trail stood a dog with 2 glass eyes and a half-length tail. As for colors, he had more than a few, blue, black spots, brown, brindle, and white, with more than a scar or two. Isolated and lonely, I knew Blue would be his name. When unleashed, I called, and he immediately came. But blast his mottled hide, he sank his teeth into my backside. He tore my pants like a flour sack. I guess it doesn't pay to turn your back on Old Blue. I went hunting and took Old Blue just to see what he would do. He rounded up a wild pig, as mean as Blue and twice as big. Well, the boar he ran down was a razorback with teeth so long that they curled back. They flattened 50 yards of brush, but Blue had caught that old cuss. I killed that boar with a K-bar knife. That dog was earning his keep, you can bet your life. Blue treated every coon for miles around. Every night the hollows echoed that beautiful sound. We went to gather the cattle, but they were nowhere to be found. No problem for Blue, he just tracked them down. That longhorn bull thought he wanted to fight. He hooked at Blue and spun and kicked with all his might. Blue bit that bull from head to tail. He sent him home with the other cows as well. The fences are now mended. The hog trouble is now ended. Chickens are safe and eggs are plenty, if that egg-sucking dog will leave you any. Corn is harvested, hay's in the shed. My wife says Blue's color is actually a shade of red. But
That's great, man. That was awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Plummer's like me when it comes to written word. He doesn't hesitate to get pretty long with it.
yeah, well, it is a lengthy poem.
It's worth every bit of it.
But, you know, I tried to really encompass a storyline in it that could be a little humorous, but yet have a lot of facts in it, you know.
There's a lot of
It's
lot
true.
going on
Sure.
there.
It's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, anyway,
Well, I appreciate you sharing that, man.
thank you so much for allowing me
Hey.
to.
Yeah.
And y'all ought to keep your eyes out for Plummer's book that's coming out before too long.
Well, I will be with the great Ed Barnes here publishing a book, so, kind of look for it. Maybe it'll
Looking forward to
some
that.
stories of legend and lore.
And some knowledge.
Well, we'll try to encompass a little bit about hunting in the catahoula breed, but
You bet.
anyway.
Well, I appreciate it. And, we're live from Uncle Earl's.
Great time.
Yeah, check out Tuskers Magazine. Where they find that at, Ed?
TuskersMagazine.com.
TuskersMagazine.com. We've actually given away a couple of your books.
Have you?
Yeah. Yeah, on our Patreon drawings. We've sent those out.
Good deal.
And what's the name of that thing?
In Pursuit of Hog Dogs.
By
Ed Barnes.
Ed Barnes,
Yeah,
the
I'm
one
in.
and only Ed Barnes.
I'm in pursuit of hog dogs. I'm not sure I've quite found them yet, but I'm going to keep going my whole life.
It's a great book. It should be on everybody's shelf. If you collect dog books, you should have In Pursuit of Hog Dogs. So it's got your whole life story in there, pretty much. A lot of it anyway.
To date, I'm working on episode 2.
There you go. There you
The
go.
evolution of Ed Barnes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Still chasing hog dogs.
Well, I appreciate it. All right, thanks for tuning in to the Houndsman XP Podcast, live from Uncle Earl's.
We'll see you next year.
You bet. We'll be here next year. Until next year, this is Fair Chase.
Good hot tamale. Yeah, piece does it. Boom.